Now, in a matter of seconds, we're going to be joined by Kajan Johnson, Canada's own Kajan Johnson. And he is back in action fairly quickly after his last fight. Recently lost via armbar to Islam Makhachev. And he's returning to action in Russia against Rustam Khabilov. Prior to the Makhachev fight, he had won 4 in a row. Most recently defeated Stevie Ray in split decision fashion back in March in London. Had a big win against Adriano Martins last year in Edmonton. And so he is returning quickly. And, of course, he has been vocal about the state of the sport. He has been vocal about the state of fighters in the UFC and their lack of rights. He's one of 3 UFC fighters at the time who publicly supported Project Spearhead. Of course, Leslie Smith, who is no longer in the UFC, Ali Quinta being another one, and Kajan Johnson. And one wonders what's at stake in this next fight. So I wanted to check in with him as he is returning to action rather quickly on September 15th. Let's now go back to the magic of Skype and say hello to Kajan Johnson, who's in Montreal, my hometown. Kajan, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you, dude?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for joining us. Do you typically do your camps? I thought that you typically stay in Vancouver. Are you usually this close to a fight in Montreal at TriStar?
Generally speaking, I do the majority of my camp in Vancouver, but as we get a little bit closer to the fight, I like to come to Montreal for like a couple weeks just to get some really good, really high level looks, get a little bit more work in the grappling aspect and the sparring aspect with high level UFC caliber guys.
And so I have to be honest with you, Kajan, when I saw this fight was booked so soon after your last fight against Khabilov in Russia, I was thinking, man, they're trying to get Kajan out of the UFC. That's the first thing that came to mind. What did you think?
Well, there's definitely an aspect of that, I'm sure. I'm sure there are certain people that are hoping that I will lose this fight so they can just cut me and be done with me, less headache. But I'm not really worried about that anymore. I'm just focused on me and what I have to do, and I see it as a blessing. I see it as a beautiful opportunity to go and apply the lessons that I learned against Islam Makhachev, against a very similar style of opponent in Khabilov, very quickly, right? And really change the narrative immediately. So for me, it's a blessing, and I'm grateful.
Is this the last fight on your contract?
Yes, it is.
Are you worried that a Leslie Smith situation might happen even if you win the fight? You're not going to get a new deal?
No. We've been speaking with Sean Shelby, and we were actually trying to re-sign the fight right after re-sign the contract right after the Makhachev fight. They didn't want to do that though. They said, no, after you beat Khabilov, then we'll give you a new contract. We've got the terms and everything all lined up already. So it's just beat Khabilov and get a new deal for a lot more money, or leave. So I welcome the challenge, and I'm blessed, and I'm happy with the situation.
In Calgary, I know you fought in March in London, and that was shortly after Project Spearhead launched, but now it had been several months later. What was the vibe like? How were people treating you, considering how vocal you have been?
Well, the UFC always treats me very well, like especially the people that I actually have the face with. They always treat me very well. There's a bunch of really amazing people that work for the UFC, and they've always been really good to me. I've got a pretty tight connection with a lot of them, especially the UFC Canada people, because of the Ultimate Fighter Tough Nations that I was on. A lot of them were involved in producing that show. So we really have a long history. The only issue that any of the UFC people have with me is the higher up people, right? I don't think Dana is all that happy with me after the whole handshake thing. I thought it was a funny joke, but he thought it was disrespectful. And Hunter and whatever other consultant work for the UFC. I know there's Hunter and one other guy that most people don't really hear about, but apparently they think I'm very disrespectful. I don't think they like me very much, but really I'm doing this for me, and I know that I have to stand my ground and say what I have to say, because nobody else is willing to do it. And if that means that I have to bear the brunt of some of the higher ups, and that they may treat me or mistreat me in certain ways, then so be it. That's my lot, and I wouldn't.
Okay, so you brought it up. I wanted to ask you, considering everything that you've been through and have said and spoken up about, you get to the weigh-ins, you see Dana White, and you do the whole, whoopsie fake handshake thing. Why did you do this? Why did you add fuel to the fire?
I thought it was a good thing to do. It seemed like a good idea at the time. No, I thought it was a playful way to get a message across and to just kind of poke the bear a little bit. Now, Dana White has said a lot of things about a lot of fighters that are very disrespectful, and nobody ever says anything to him. A lot of the time, this causes a lot of anger and frustration within me, which then in turn leads to me acting out in certain ways, one of which may have been the handshake. Originally, I actually was planning to do something much worse, so I'm glad that my Sky team, my guides, guided me towards a more playful approach.
What were you planning on doing?
What was I planning on doing?
Yes.
Well, my original plan was to kind of to make a real stand and a real statement, and instead of staring down my opponent, to go like fist in the air to Dana White and stare him down instead. But this is something that I've always dealt with. I have a bit of an anger issue. I've always had this throughout childhood from various childhood traumas that I've experienced. This has led to an anger issue. But now, because of all of this that's happened, I'm continuing to work on myself and continuing to work on that demon, and to try to let go of the outcome, because I get really upset when I focus on and need a certain outcome to happen. Like, for one, I'm very upset with the way that the UFC treats its fighters a lot of the time. In many different ways. I'm very upset with, or I have been very upset with the fighters themselves and their reluctancy to stand up for themselves and to organize under Project Spearhead or whatever banner, to stand up and actually fight for something, instead of just squabbling amongst ourselves. And this leads to a lot of frustration, which then leads to anger. So recently, I've been really letting go of whatever outcome is going to happen. Maybe I'm going to be here and I'm going to see the change. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm just that guy that took a stand at some point, and then the machine kept rolling on, and 20 years from now, fighters will finally begin to stand up and fight for their rights and get what they truly deserve. But I don't really have any control over that. I don't have control over the outcome. All I can really control is my thoughts and my actions. So I'm just acting in the way that I know needs to happen. I'm going to continue to press for Project Spearhead. I'm going to continue to stand up for fighters in a good way. And I'm going to let go of the outcome. And in doing that, I will alleviate a lot of this frustration, alleviate a lot of this anger that I've been carrying around, and be able to be a happier, lighter person that doesn't shoot themselves in the foot quite so often.
Did Dana White say something to you after that, backstage?
No, nobody said anything. No, I saw Dana backstage, and he just looked right through me like I didn't exist. Yeah, nobody really said much to me in the way of the UFC. A couple of the lower level UFC employees were laughing about it, like, oh my God, you're absolutely mad. But yeah, there was no official that nobody sat me down. It wasn't like the athlete retreat where I got like escorted out and people like gave me shit or anything. So yeah.
It feels, at least to me, like there's not a lot of momentum behind this, with Leslie, leaving, and I just don't see anything. And I spoke about this on our show recently. I posted the clip. I just don't feel like it's going to happen in my lifetime. Are you feeling any momentum whatsoever, or at this point is it really a non-issue right now in terms of rallying the fighters together to get on the same page?
I don't know if it's possible. I'm going to continue to try because I feel like I have to. I feel like I'm not being true to myself if I don't continue to try. But maybe the MMAFA was right. Maybe the union is too high of a standard. Is too lofty of a goal. Maybe the way that this sport changes is through the Ali Act and through the antitrust lawsuits. Maybe that's the way it changes. But regardless, I'm going to continue to press for Project Spearhead and continue to attempt to organize because I believe that it could be extremely beneficial to us to have an organization like Spearhead. And then, like I said, whatever happens is going to happen. I'm letting go of the outcome. I can only control my process, so that's what I'm focused on.
So you think if you win on September 15th, you will get a new contract from the UFC? You believe that?
Yes, I do believe that.
And you think if you lose, you're done?
Yes, definitely.
That's a lot of pressure. What do you think? You feeling good?
I feel great, man. Like, for me, it's not a lot of pressure because I know that whatever's meant for me will not escape me. If I'm not meant to be in the UFC, then I won't be in the UFC, and something better will come along. The next stage will be better, and that will truly serve me to my highest good. And if I'm meant to be in the UFC, then I will win, and I will continue to be in the UFC, and that will serve me to my highest. So once again, I'm just letting go of the outcome, man, and focusing on the process, and the cards are gonna fall as they may. I don't really control the cards,
Right.
That's up to my Sky team. That's up to creation. I'm not God. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I know that whatever does happen, it will serve me.
What makes you think that they keep you around when they didn't want to keep Leslie around, and you're arguably even more vocal than she was?
I don't know. I have their word.
Okay, all right.
Whatever that means. We've talked about contracts. We've talked about dollar figures. We've talked about everything already. So they've told me that they will give me a new contract after I beat Rustam Khabilov. And if they don't, well, then I'm leaving the UFC, coming off a win, and now I'm a free agent. So I'm sure I can get paid quite a lot of money coming off a win in UFC, especially the way I'm going to win against Khabilov in a place like Bellator, ONE FC, or any of these other organizations, right? So, yeah.
Whatever
happens.
Have you had a chance to talk to George about this?
I haven't talked to George directly about it. I don't think he's signed by the UFC right now, so I don't really know what he could do as far as Project Spearhead goes. We've spoken a bit in the past about different organizing efforts and like what the benefits of this one versus that one are. But yeah, since the whole MMAAA thing, I haven't really spoken to him.
All right. Well, I wish you the best, Kajan. Keep doing your thing, my man, and keep standing up for what you believe in. Maybe for the next one, if he's there, don't do the handshake thing. I don't know. Do whatever your heart desires. But when I saw that one, I was like, holy smokes, the ball's on this guy. But man, I hope this doesn't backfire. I wish you nothing but the best. Good luck out there in Russia. Looking forward to seeing the fight.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on, bro.
Always. There he is. Kajan Johnson. Great stuff as always from him. He has certainly strong beliefs, and he's in a tough spot, although he just said, which I find to be fascinating, that they have given him their word that if he wins, and he's on the last fight of his deal, if he wins on September 15th against Rustam Khabilov, who's one of the best fighters in the world and certainly one of the very best at 155 and somewhat of a similar opponent to the one he just fought and lost to, Islam Makhachev, if he wins, he will get a new contract. And you'll recall that Leslie Smith, who's very much out in front on Project Spearhead. She had one fight left on her deal back in April when she was supposed to fight Aspen Ladd, and Aspen Ladd didn't make weight. The fight never came to fruition, and they just essentially bought her out. First time I've ever heard them do that. You know, they said, we're going to pay you to essentially go away. And here's Kajan Johnson, who says, all right, they're not going to give me a new deal if I lose, but if I win, they've told me they're going to give me a new deal. That is fascinating. Khabilov has been on a roll. He's won his last 5 in a row. He's coming off a win over Desmond Green back in September. A very tough fight. And, oh, by the way, it's in Russia, of all places. Seems as though the cards have been stacked against Kajan Johnson, but he appears to have a great take on it all, and he appears to be ready for the challenge. So we wish him the best.